Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Black Men with Purpose podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a safe space where we share our thoughts on a multitude of topics in hopes of helping Black males, young and not so young, overcome obstacles and challenges that could be hindrances to happiness, productivity, and success. We believe that through our experiences, successes, and failures, we can have some conversations that might help other Black males in their respective journeys through this thing that we call life. And on today's episode, our topic is going to be choosing the right kind of partner. I think we can have a little fun with this while talking about some serious stuff. But also, before we get going, you'll notice we are a man down today. Brother Ray is, as we record this, we're out celebrating his birthday with his family. So we wish him a happy birthday and hope that he is enjoying himself.
And unfortunately, I think what happens is that you find right away that those young people have to deal with kind of adult issues uh, right away, and most of them are not equipped because as I've learned growing up, a lot of adults aren't equipped. you know, so I think that while this begins early, a lot of care and consideration really needs to be taken into making this decision. So I'm sure I'll have a lot more to say, but I just wanted to start off with that by just discussing the fact that it begins early and becomes a really important decision when you start looking at the things that transpire, from uh, unfortunately, assaults that take place just because you want to choose the young man or young lady that might appeal to your eye, but you don't really know much about their character or their heart. So with that, I'll pass it on to one of the other brothers and come back later.
You look like
I'm
you're trying to get your. Oh, go ahead, B. You look like you're trying to get yourself off of mute or something.
nah, we start off with, piggyback on Rob was saying about us in high school and trying to figure out. Uh, I think a lot of time picking and choosing the right partner depends on how developed you are mentally and psychologically. A lot of times we pick people to try to complete us and we pick the wrong person, right? And so we have some imperfections or some things we need to work on in order for us to be a better person, and we'll look for that other person to fulfill those needs for us. And sometimes we end up picking the wrong person based on those needs. And sometimes it is the looks, but sometimes it's just what that person gives to us just temporarily, and we're like, you know what, they're not equipped to do that in the long run, and I'm not equipped to receive what you got to give me for the long run. So we just off to a bad start. So a lot of times we end up in situations because we're not fulfilled in who we are as a person. So a lot of times thinking about a person to be with us, a lot of times we got to look at ourselves first and say, are we ready for that? So
Absolutely.
yeah. So I'm sure we get more into it, but I'm gonna stop. That's my intro for tonight.
And my intro will be just to kind of piggyback piggyback what the two of you said. Um, I think that we start talking about picking the right kind of partner, but we have to work on ourselves first, right? And I know when we're talking about being young and in school and things like that, that's a lot easier said than done. But from the perspective of being a bit older, right, you have to make yourself presentable for the right kind of person, right? Spend some time getting to know yourself. What do you like? What don't you like? Right? Loving yourself, respecting yourself. And I think that that is part of the reason why so many first marriages fail, right? Is because not all of those things occurred before that first marriage occurred, right? And so you kind of got involved in this relationship, you were in love or thought you were in love, whatever the case was. and you have not done that internal work to get yourself where you need to be, where you are to be, because it's not even just about you choosing the right kind of person. That person that you're choosing is doing the same thing, right? They're choosing you. And so you want to make sure that you have done the things to make yourself presentable when that right person comes along. So my intro.
Absolutely. The profundity of it all. Just imagine that, us trying to navigate this life with the idea that we know what we want when we don't even know who we are. So, like Brother Kev was saying and alluding to, choosing the right kind of partner, man, when you really take that time to figure out who you are, because we can't know what we really want till we know who we really are. And, as long as you're making choices as important as a partner in anything, but, specifically, relationships and things like that, choosing a partner, I think Rod kind of alluded to it. You choosing a partner. One of the things that I think young men I'm seeing do a lot is they want to choose the kind of partners or be attracted to the kind of women that their buddies think is right, or who their buddies think are fine, or whatever. And there was this interesting conversation. It's like, are you more is it more important to you for you to impress your friends than it is for you to, have the right person? And so, when you don't know who you are, you can be caught to those whims. So choosing the right kind of partner is getting to know yourself and understanding it ain't nothing wrong with having no preferences, but understand what your needs are too.
Yeah, which would beg the question, choosing the right partner. Knowing that that's different from person to person, why do you think it is that, especially younger people, now that you're a little older, a little more seasoned, like what would be some of the advice you would give to your younger self, right? Before ever getting involved in trying to choose a partner. And I think about it from the perspective of, well, it really depends on who you are, right? What you value, what you've been taught. For instance, if you were raised in the church, and you believe that he who finds, right, which would imply that the man should be the one doing the finding, and the woman should be the one waiting to be found, preparing herself, right? And so I just wanted to know, what do you brothers think about that from that perspective, and what would you tell your younger self about really finding a suitable partner, right?
Oh, definitely. I would say don't fall into that pressure that other people will put on you. You have people they'll say, hey, it's time for you to get married, or people will say it's time for you to settle down, but you know yourself better than anybody else. If you know there's a couple of goals in your life that you want to get done, and I think that was John that mentioned about it's okay for you to have preference. Sometimes in those circles, they try to make it seem like, well, if you have a preference, you just being picky. And not necessarily you being picky, but this is a commitment. If you're choosing a partner, you're choosing somebody that's going to be with you, ride or die. And then with that, beyond the looks, beyond the mental, can they bring what you need to bring? And listen, same thing is, can you support them? Do you have a skill set to support somebody else as a partner? So you got to look at all that. Are you ready to go down that road to just make that commitment, be just with that one person, right? And are you ready to be the man and understand what that means? And I think Rob mentioned too, it just also depends on how you grew up and how you were raised. That goes back to, we had a previous discussion about how important fathers are. So many men and women end up in jacked up relationships based on how they were raised with or without their dad. So that's important too. So,
man, I got to jump in and piggyback. I'm gonna get to the what advice I would give, but I got to piggyback on that. Especially Bishop Myron in the church, man. I tell you, man, they will create the perfect partner for you based on how they feel you should move. And it was something, and I'm about to get in trouble, but I want all the smoke. But they used to always say, you know what, Singletary, you need this woman like this, woman like that. And they would get these meek, docile. And as I've, gotten to know myself better, that ain't my flavor at all. I like loud, brash, opinionated. It just, for me, it does it for me, like I was dating this one young lady and it was like, how are you gonna have a life with her? She's got all these tattoos. I'm like, I love tattoos. What are you talking about? So I had to understand, because I'm the one that got to deal with this person.
Kind of really answered that question perfectly. I don't have a ton to add to that, Rod, but I agree in a sense of, you get this pressure from others, whether it be mom, dad, whoever the case is, the church, who put, they put this pressure on you. But the fact is, and I think it was Ta-Nehisi Coates I heard having a very similar conversation, or he wrote something about this, but oftentimes, especially in the Black community, I feel like we kind of take this collectivist approach, right? And you can't do that towards something that's as individual and private as marriage, right? Or a relationship, whether it doesn't have to be marriage, just a relationship in general, right? Don't you have to go for whatever appeals to you, right? Whatever works for you. Like John said, somebody might look at you and think this one way about you and not realize that somebody with tattoos, that's right up your alley. That's what you enjoy. You enjoy somebody who's loud, not meek. You know what I mean? So yeah, we can't take this collectivist approach to something that's as individual as marriage or a relationship. But as far as advice that I would give, probably just take your time. Don't feel pressured into by anyone, whether it be the person that you are involved with, or whether it be mom or whoever the case is. Just take your time, enjoy the relationship, build, and let things progress organically, essentially, right? Don't rush anything, just let it all happen organically, and whatever happens happens. That would probably be my advice. Now, if you ask me tomorrow, my advice might be different, but that's what comes to mind today. So
I like to add to that. Just know your worth too. I think that's the biggest thing is that sometimes people end up in situations with somebody because that person makes them, we talking earlier about, well, your honey makes everybody want her or whatever. So, but really, does that person make you value yourself? So I would definitely say, know your worth. Know what you bring to the table, know what you like, what you don't like. And if it's okay, if you with somebody and it ain't and they don't bring you, make you feel good about yourself, it's okay to be like, hey, we just gonna go a different direction, but definitely know your worth for sure.
Know your worth and charge interest.
Yeah, but that's a great point, and probably none of you brothers, but I have known some that have really probably gone out of their way to please others, instead of themselves knowing their worth and knowing what they want, and also recognizing that in a relationship, no matter what kind it is, partner is the key word. Someone that you can partner with, right? Which means that they don't have to be just like you. They don't even have to like all of the things that you like.
Right.
But you do have to be able to see yourself partnering with them if you're going to be in a relationship, But I think a lot of times, people find that, people come in with certain expectations, right? And then they're depending on you to to meet those expectations.
Right.
Like, but those are your expectations, right? And I always say expectations is the one thing that leads to disappointment, right? Because if you don't have any expectations, you can't be disappointed.
Man, you sound like Felicia. Oh my God. That is
You
Felicia to
know?
a T. Don't have expectations. Never have
Yeah.
expectations.
So if for instance, if you go in and you're like, you know what, I want to get to know you, I want to get to understand you, vice versa, and we've heard, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and there's a lot of realness to that,
Yeah.
and you might not know in the beginning, right? And then some people don't take the time to really get to know. They're like, instead of being in tune with who you are, what you like and don't like, what you need and don't need, right? And understanding that, if you're looking for validation, that's not a reason to get into a relationship.
You got that right.
You have to be able to do that on your own and get to that place on your own, right? And then you have to be able to really examine, what that person brings, vice what you bring, and is that compatible, right? If we're planning to have something long term or to have something, of substance, because then that's the other part. I've met people. They're like, if you serious, I'm not your girl.
Right.
Where they at, man? I'm trying to find.
Like, where they at? Where they at? Let's get them.
But hearing that, can kind of set you aback if you're not expecting it, right? It's like, whoa, now I'm scared. Because all the things that I envisioned or had in my mind as far as, expectations, you turned that over on its head. But and that's why it's so important that you do know what it is that you want and need before even getting into the water of dating or having a relationship.
Oh, and while we're on that note, don't go into it thinking you're gonna change somebody in a partner as well. You know what I'm saying? That
Nor should you even try.
huh?
Right? Nor should you even try.
Right.
That shouldn't even be a goal, right? But yeah.
I mean, because if you trying that, like Robert said, you got somebody say, "Hey, I ain't trying to be serious," and you're gonna spend all your time, all your money trying to change that situation, and you're gonna be a broke brother. That's
You're gonna be broke and unhappy, and disappointed.
Yeah, because he told you up front.
Yeah,
he told you up front. And that whole I'm gonna change your mind.
Yeah. And so, with that, so you got to be careful. I think that just goes back to knowing who you are, because if you do get that news, okay, I'm digging you, but you tell me you ain't serious. Okay, let me be strong enough for who I am as a person. Be like, you know what? Nice knowing you. I'm going a different direction. But you get hung up, you get stuck in that spot, boy.
Or you go in with the agreement that this is going to be casual. We just, and then you catch feelings.
It never worked. We know that never worked.
No.
After about the third minute, somebody gonna catch feelings. Look, either the person that
Not
said
the third minute.
not the third minute. Either the person who said it up front, hey, I don't want. It's just gonna be casual. Either that person gonna catch feelings, or somebody gonna catch feelings, and the whole thing gonna change, and then y'all gonna be mad. No, man.
And then it is not only that you do that, but then it is okay. What happens when how you feel about the original agreement? How you feel when that changes, right? Because if you're not mature enough.
Yeah,
you're not gonna handle it right. Instead of saying, okay, look, hey, let's go to dinner, let's talk. I have a feeling that things are starting to change. I want to know where you are. Right?
Right.
Yeah. No,
Why
If
not
we're not
spend
there,
money
then
on
we might
dinner?
be good.
Let's walk to the park and talk about it.
Nope, I ain't spend no money on this. No more money. We ain't going no dinner.
Oh,
wow.
man.
And then there's that, right?
And then there's that.
But
No, I mean, if I wanted for to change to be stronger, then yes, dinner. But if I feel like it might take a turn for the bad, I don't want that restaurant to be associated with that bad experience. That's all I'm saying.
You don't want to see, you don't want to be flipping tables in public, is what you're saying.
That's basically
Take
it.
my next booth to that restaurant and the ghost of Christmas past show up.
yeah, but I tell you, man, from what I am from what I'm hearing, it's a little treacherous out there now.
Yeah.
It's
Sir, you are hearing correctly, sir.
I'm just saying, for people that are actively out there searching and looking, you have to put a lot into choosing the right person. I mean, with the onslaught of dating apps,
Right.
which that could be a topic all on its own, right? But yeah, and choosing a person based on what, right? And I think where you are in your life matters a lot as well. I mean,
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
we were in our 20s having this conversation, it's a whole different conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially with this collection of men gathered, that's a wild conversation right there.
No question. Definitely a different conversation back then.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, so that now that you're a little older and wiser, what would you tell your 20-something-year-old self, about that, and the process, and I mean, Kev, you grew up in the church, you're a PK. I mean,
I would tell my younger self,
that's a topic. That's a topic in and of itself as well.
Don't touch that.
That's a 2-part episode right there.
Yeah, but I think back, about the influence that growing up in the church really has on
Right.
how you look at dating, through those lenses, and constantly being, almost berated from the pulpit every Sunday about, what you should and shouldn't do,
Right.
what you should and shouldn't look at. You're like, she wearing it?
I'm like, y'all saying I'm supposed to eventually get there. I need to get on the road to get there. Like, I can't just turn it on.
But I think that's why, there should be real talk involved, in the church, outside the church, it doesn't matter, but you have to have real conversations about what people are going to face,
Yeah.
so that they can, at least be somewhat prepared. You're never going to be fully prepared, but at least, be like, hey, I remember when we had this conversation with, whether it's, in the singles ministry, whether it's with, the book club, or, a social night out with the friends, whatever it is, you at least have had the conversation and you understand, oh, seems like one of the things I was going to have to, prepare myself to have to maneuver. And, and then the real feelings that you feel, right? Because that's another part of it, especially with young people.
That vulnerability. There's that vulnerability again that I'm always talking about, and that comes up in our conversations quite a bit. But yeah, you're right. And then it takes a modicum of vulnerability to be able to have that conversation. I think,
Right.
So, but no, I agree with what you're saying.
And I think it goes back to how we even started this conversation. You just got to be, I think our young people need to be taught how to be more confident of who they are as a person, what you bring to the table, as an individual and not necessarily look for a partner to complete you, but hey, work on building yourself up so when the person comes, you'll know who that person is. You'll be vulnerable enough, but yet you're confident enough in who you are to allow that person into your vulnerable space without taking over your personality or taking over who you are and what you want to be as a person. Because a partner should come to complete you. They shouldn't come change anything about you so much, but actually add to what you have. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like, if you got you got one person as a spender, you got one person as a saver, that ain't going to work. You know what I'm saying? You got to find somebody where y'all going to have a happy medium. And I think our young people, just teaching them young, hey, this is who you are as a person. And this is what you you need to have this is what you need from somebody to go along with you. If they don't bring this to you, then it's okay for you not to be with that person. And I think so many times we just feel like the first person to come along, that's who you got to be yoked with, and you got the good or the bad. Sometimes we bring some bad stuff. We make people get them on a bad tangent, and they go down that road too long, farther than they have to. But yeah, I think it just goes back to we got to start teaching people it's okay for you to be confident in who you are.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback that a little bit, I mean, you kind of talk about that individualism, right? And the fact of the matter is, growing individually doesn't stop just because you're with someone, right? Like if you are, whether it be just in a relationship or in a marriage, the goal is to grow individually and as a couple, right? And oftentimes that's where the problems come in, right? Because if the pace at which the two of you are growing individually becomes too incongruent, then the ability to grow as a couple becomes severely hampered, right? Man, that was actually really good. Are we recording this? Anyway,
like he using the SAT words, boy. Go ahead.
Truly, you have to be growing individually and as a couple, and you need to be kind of growing at somewhat the same pace, right? Because if you're not growing together, then you're growing apart. And that statement is meant to be dichotomous, by the way, when I say growing apart. Yeah. So I mean, that individualism is important beforehand and once you partner with someone.
And you got to be able to support the other person's growth too.
Absolutely.
You got to be comfortable in who you are enough that so when that person does grow or achieve at a different level, you're still comfortable in yourself and in the relationship. So
see, but that's where I'm talking about, and you're exactly right. But that's exactly what I'm saying, because that's where the problems come in. If you have one person who's just steadily growing, right, and the other person is just kind of stagnant, well, then once that person that's growing starts hitting certain levels of growth and achievement,
you can't go with them.
That becomes problematic typically, I think, for the person who's stagnant.
So what do you do in those cases, right? And I think that's where a lot of people make the decision to depart the scene, right?
Yep.
As opposed to, hey, we sit down and have this real talk. I've been doing XYZ to try and grow to be the best version of myself for you, for our family, what have you. And you've been watching me do the work, right? And here's some of the things that, that I think that we have or can benefit from me doing that. What is it that you want to do? Do you feel like you're growing, or are you comfortable standing still? It just appears that, the real conversations don't take place enough, right? For fear that, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't want to make you feel bad. I don't want you to think that I think I'm better than, but I just want to have a conversation about what it is that you really want, and Is this something we do together, or not?
And Rod, I actually have two quick responses to that. The first thing I'll say is I think that has to be caught early on, right? You don't want to get to a place where it's 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road. 6 months, 2 years down the road, and it's like all of a sudden, well, man, I've grown to this level and this person is still stagnant. That needs to be seen as early as possible. Like, wait, I'm growing here and this person isn't growing, so that you can have that conversation early enough to where it hasn't gotten out of control, right? And if you can catch something like that early and have that sort of discussion, well, you're doing your part. And if at that point that person still continues to remain stagnant and you keep growing, well, if you end up having to say, hey, I'm gonna have to check out of this thing, you at least did your part. You caught it early, you've probably tried multiple times. But yes, it can be problematic. Is that it makes sense? You understand what I'm saying? If you wait until too late, it might be just that, too late.
Right.
And then
Right.
the second thing I'll say to that is I think that's why it's important too. And I'll tell you something that me and Felicia, something that we do is we have a marriage meeting every Wednesday night. Every single Wednesday night, pretty much without fail, right? And that marriage meeting is to talk about our financial goals, make sure we're on track. We talk about anything that might be happening in the marriage that needs to be discussed, anything that needs to be discussed, period, regarding our relationship, whatever it is, we do that on that Wednesday night. Now, that's not to say that we just save everything up and we don't talk all the other times. We talk all the time, but Wednesday night is dedicated to anything that maybe we hadn't discussed earlier because of time and other obligations and stuff like that. And I think that's important in a relationship too, to actually set aside time on a regular basis to have these sorts of discussions, because that sort of thing can come up in a meeting like that. If you're having these regular meetings and discussions about things, so something like that can come up. Hey, I've been, wanting to talk to you about something. And oftentimes in those meetings, and I'll shut up after this, I'll say something like, hey, is everything good? Am I doing everything that I need to do to meet your needs? Right? Something along those lines. And it's a safe space to be able to say, well, maybe you could do this differently, or I was thinking about this, so I think that sort of thing is so important,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right. And so one of the things I was going to ask you about is, like, early on, is it too soon to have that conversation, right? Because some people say, well, you shouldn't do that on the first date. Well, I mean, you paying for a first date, typically, right? You have to know whether or not you want a second date.
Right.
What are the things you talk about or make sure that you get an understanding of regarding that individual on the first date?
I don't personally think it's too early. I mean, I'll let John and B talk, but I don't think that's too soon to have a discussion like that.
Right.
I mean, you don't want the person thinking that you're all, well, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm trying to get married. This is our first date. Not in those terms. But yeah, I don't think that a discussion regarding someone's individual growth, right? How they, what they're doing to grow as a person, or how they see themselves in a certain amount of time. I don't know. Absolutely. I don't think that that's a problem on even a first date. Go ahead, John. You're about to say something.
And no, I wasn't.
I'm sorry. I thought you were about to say something. My bad.
Oh, no. Well, John, you sure? Because you were trying to unmute.
No, I just thought about all the foolishness that started going across my mind. I said, I should sit this one out, because nothing but foolishness hit my mind. I said, let me set this one out,
Oh, God.
I don't know, man. I mean, yeah, it depends on where you are as a person. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because we talk about how as a young people in their 20s, you want to date around. You don't want to, settle down with the first or second person come along. But then
really,
Well, that's what we listen. That's what we say to people, right? That's what sometimes we say to people. But then I'm thinking,
what if that first or second person is the one?
No, but that's what I'm getting ready to say. Like my daughter, she got married 3 months after she graduated college. So her sophomore year in college, she was engaged, and her husband. I was like, dude, just wait till she finished school. That's all I ask. And so, and I know people's trying to talk her out of it. It's like 22. You sure you want to get married? She was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So, she had established herself that she already knew what she wanted at that age, right? So she wasn't playing around. She dated one or two guys, but when the one came along, she's like, yep, this is it. Let's get it done. And so, I mean, they still together now. So what I'm saying
that's been a while, right? Kayla's been married for at least 10 years, right?
It's almost 10 years, yeah. Almost 10 years. So yeah, no, it's not too early to have that conversation. The problem is when we had that conversation, do we ignore the answer? You know what I'm saying? Because we'll have a conversation. Sometimes we'll ignore the answer because what was them sitting across the table from us. We're like, oh shoot, let me just run this for a couple of months and see what happens. Then a couple of months then turn into a year, and you're like, oh man, I should have listened to myself, had this conversation, and got out of this. I should have got out of this on the third night, but nope, I'm still here. Now we stuck trying to get out of it. Or now we got to have that conversation after we done, you done went to comedy shows, you done went to jazz festivals, you done went to weddings together. People start looking out like, yeah, y'all gonna get together, and like, nah, this ain't gonna work. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, no.
So having that conversation I think that conversation is crucial early, and being honest with yourself. Don't overlook your answer. Because sometimes we'll do that. We know what the answer is. We like, let me just run with it anyway. So
and you know what? And Rob, before you go, B, you're exactly right. And I'm glad you said that when you started off, because that's true. It depends upon where you are right now. Everything that I said a few minutes ago, that's coming from the perspective of somebody who's about to be 52 years old in 3.5 weeks, right? So the 20-year-old me would not have said that. So you're exactly right. It depends upon where you are in life, right? The 20-year-old me wasn't having marriage meetings every week, and so yes, you're exactly.
The 47-year-old version of me ain't having marriage meetings. So, everybody. Let me jump in before Rod get in. I just want to say, that's why I wanted some responsible conversation to spark something responsible for me. I think it's good to have those conversations as early as possible and as often as possible to come into it with the idea, listen, like for instance, say for me, I'm looking for a wife. So marriage is that, but that don't mean that because you sitting at the other end of the table with me that I'm looking for you to be my wife. I just want you to know that's where I'm headed. But I think it's important to have a good understanding of what our big priorities are and what are some of the smaller preferences, and don't get the two mixed up.
Yeah, that's
because true. One of the mistakes we make, especially in this time, is we got so many options, but we think that because we have more options, we make better decisions, when science has proven we make more terrible decisions when we have more options. Like I think about when I was on active duty and didn't have to figure out what to wear. Oh, I could get ready so fast. Let me tell you something. I just be going down to the front to drop LJ off at the bus, and I'm trying to figure out, well, which set of warm-up pants do I want to wear? I don't want to wear this t-shirt. Let me wear that t-shirt. So we got to understand, like, people always, like, because you were talking about Kayla, you're talking about getting married so early. People say, no, you should live life. Now, we think that we got all the time and we got all of these options, when really, we do better when we just have a few set. We tend to be more committed. We tend to have more longevity when we can minimize the decisions that we have to make and operate with the set of decisions in front of us, instead of thinking, oh, I have all these abundant choices. Then we never commit. So I think that's important.
Unless you're taught differently, So I just really wanted to get your thoughts on that, because so what goes into you choosing a partner? You're on mute, Kev.
Yeah, there was a helicopter earlier. I guess I forgot to
Oh,
unmute
okay.
after that. It's not an exact science, right? And I think that's just part of that. That it just kind of is what it is with that. You can, not to mention, so often, we get into these relationships and stuff when we are young, right? And the things that we're talking about now are things that we have learned over the course of years in many relationships, right? When you're 20, even 25 years old, these aren't things. Experience, right? These sorts of things come from experience, right? How does
So,
the saying go? Good decisions come from experience, but experience come from bad decisions, right? So you make those bad decisions early on, and it's just kind of not an exact science. You have to, but you can do everything in your power. You can do all the things that we're talking about, right? And there's still no guarantee, right? You have a greater chance of getting it right, but there's still no guarantee, right? You may be someone who's just not really that good. You're not a good judge of character, right? You're not able to discern very well, right? So you may have doing all of these things. You know exactly. You've done all of the self work, and all of that, and here you are sitting across from this person who seems like the perfect person, but maybe that person sitting across from you is just talking a good game. You know what I mean? They're gaslighting you. They're telling you what you want to hear. And if you're not able to kind of discern and pick up on the things, you might end up with this person and then find out, oof, yeah, that's not who I thought it was. So I think that's why, to answer the first part of your question where you said, why do so many people get it wrong? I just think that has so much to do with it. Again, it's not really an exact science, even if you do all of the right things, But I think, again, the older you get, the more experiences that you have. Again, that's why I think second marriages tend to work so well. Most times, what do they say? First marriages, 50% divorce. Second, marriages have much greater longevity than that. And I think that's why you learn all of those hard lessons in that first marriage, right? So you kind of learn what you should and shouldn't do. And in that first one, and then it makes things so much better the second go around. Like, I mean, in my second marriage, we've been together for 10 years, and this is the best relationship I've ever been in. And things are great. Like the things that I talked about earlier, we're growing individually and as a couple at the same rate. We have these meetings every week to make sure that we're on track and doing what we need to do. Like, it's great. Is it perfect? Of course not. No relationship is going to be perfect, but things are great. Like, it's amazing. And so, but yeah, it took, some work to get here, and it took some pains, right, to get to this point.
And do you think that younger people, younger men especially, could benefit from being engaged in those conversations with people that have already experienced some things?
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even younger married couples, linking up with not an older married couple or couples who've been married longer, that's beneficial too. But yeah, going back to what you're saying just about the young men, absolutely. If we had this conversation with ourselves 20 years ago, where would we be? You know what I'm saying? If we could have this conversation with us 20 years ago, we'd probably be in a different position. I ain't gonna say we'd be in a better position. We just be in a different position. You know what I'm saying? And again, that just goes back what we said about the experience. Some of us, like I said, we grew up in church, and church was like, oh yeah, if you're a man, next thing you do, you got to get married. And no, and we didn't really teach our young people to go out and be successful, go out and spend that time going to school or going to the military or find that career path, start your bit. We didn't talk about that. The next thing was get married. You got to do that. And so sometimes we jack people up like that. We got to encourage people to be your best you in order for you to find a partner. Because if you're not your best you, no matter how many remixes you make, you're gonna mess it up.
I don't know what they was teaching y'all, but listen, when they was talking to us about getting married, us young men, they were definitely telling us we needed to have a job, because they were like, you're gonna have some bills to pay. when you get married. So they was telling us, join the military, go to school, because you need to afford this wife that you're gonna get. But
Yeah, and well, fortunately or unfortunately, what we heard a lot of was, before you fornicate, you better get a wife.
And I was telling them, too late.
Better to marry than to burn. Is that what they said? Better to marry than to burn.
And so I mean, I get it, right? I understand it, right? And at that time, you just don't realize that there's a lot more to this than just getting married so that you can have sex.
Worst advice ever.
Yeah, right.
Ever.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so you have to be careful how you dishing out advice, and really make sure that that people are not going in blindly. I mean,
Rod, you were talking about like the uncle that always had him a young woman, then he get real old and ain't got nobody. Nobody ever talk about that part when he at the end of his life, or he just at that advanced stage and he don't have nobody he could trust, or he don't have nobody to share. They don't talk about how that feels. And I think
that is literally all my uncles, John. All of my mother's brothers, every last one of them, Max. When I was a kid, they were all Max. Never seen without a woman, and now all
alone. All of them.
And I don't say that like to, it's sad, right?
It's
but you're
sad.
exactly right. That's
tragic.
That's what's happened,
And imagine, us having these marriage positive, pro-marriage conversations, because what are young men hearing from older men? Or I don't know what they're hearing now. We're growing as men. Black men deserve a lot of credit for the progress we're making. But I know what we were hearing. Yo, man, don't get locked down, man. Try to have as many as you want. Go out and have fun. Live your life, blah, 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 blah. And just imagine the impact of having successful adult men with, ain't nobody on this panel that, would have an issue out in this dating world, because we bring all of, the things to the table. So just imagine them hearing men like us being marriage positive and being, talking positively about choosing a good partner and giving her the best years of your life and the essence of who you are, and building something that lasts and stands the test of time, instead of that, man, the old ball and chain getting on my nerves, and I can't, I think that would have a major impact.
And then as far as partnering, you have to clearly know and understand the heart of the person that you're dealing with, right? Because people are going to change, right? Just think, I don't look like I did when I was 25, right? So, if you love the 25-year-old me, with the nice hair and, and the cool stroll, yeah, so I'm not that guy anymore, right?
Right.
So understanding that people are going to change, they're going to evolve, and finding someone that you can grow and evolve with. So knowing their heart, because typically if their heart is good, it's going to be good, right? If they're a little shady, then they probably gonna be a little shady. So you absolutely need to know what you're getting yourself into. And then two, understand that, you have to be committed, right? Committed to doing the work. And I think that's the part that people sometimes leave out. Relationship, no matter what kind it is, requires work, right? I love you brothers to pieces. Some of you require more work than others. You're like, dang, here we go. But I say that to say that, relationships that are important to you, though, it requires a piece of you, right? And you have to understand that, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think sometimes people don't recognize that piece. And so understanding those two things, I think, will help individuals decide on the type of person, like-minded, like goals, whatever the things you value, then know that you understand what you can get from your partner regarding that, right? And then as the man in the relationship, like I used to always tell my aunt, when she used to get on me about missing church when I had to work on Sundays. And she's like, you know what, you need to be in church. I'm like, yeah, I'm here. Every Sunday that I'm off, I'm here. I said, besides, if my family ends up living on the street, ain't nobody gonna say that she didn't take care of her family. They're gonna look at me, right? And we have to recognize that, and also, and that's what I try to pass off to men that are younger, that are gonna become head of their homes and leaders within their homes, to understand that there's a responsibility that comes along with that. So you have to be committed to that and make sure that you're doing everything that you can. So partner well, because you want to live a good, happy life, and having weekly meetings to talk about all the important things that's going on I think that's a great tool, and more people should do that. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox and pass it on.
Well, if we are into rant mode, I'm going to go ahead and jump into my rant for the week, which has to do with relationships, actually, in some ways. But for those who did not see the cover of the British Vogue magazine with Rihanna and A$AP Rocky and their son, it's a cover of them on a beach. Rihanna's out front. She has her hand behind her. A$AP Rocky's holding her hand. He's behind her. He's holding their son, and he's kissing the son. And there's been so much. I don't know if I'm assuming y'all have probably heard about the controversy over the last couple of weeks about this, right? And everybody, there's been so much talk on social media about the emasculation of Black men. That is the most stupid thing I've heard, right? Like, is that what we've come to? It's emasculating now because he's behind her and he's holding a son. So now it's emasculating to be a father and to be a supportive husband. Make it make sense to me, because I don't get it. I don't understand for the life of me how that's emasculating in any way. What it is toxic masculinity that has you thinking that way, is what it is, right? And then on top of that, the article is about Rihanna. It's not about A$AP Rocky. It's about her. So she should be at the forefront in the picture. But again, because it's supposed to be a 2-minute rant or less, there's so much more I could talk about on that. But it just really irritated me to see some of the comments coming from Black men and Black women, for that matter, about the emasculation of Black men simply because of that picture and what it supposedly represented. So please quit the foolishness and get yourself some business.
Speaking of Black folks, what we gonna do about your governor down there? That dude is just off the chain now. Today I heard on the news today he signed his own legislation that now he created a committee to oversee Disney. I'm like, dude, really? I just if this is not the modern day Bull Connor,
yeah,
I don't know what it is, but that's what he is. He's definitely the modern day Bull Connor. And in a way, I do hope that he runs, because once he gets outside of Florida, I think he'll see that some of his ideology is not going to be accepted in today's society. I mean, enough is enough. And I just hope I hope he does get in, just so we can shut that man down, because when you go back and look at his history, he's been trained up to be a Bull Connor. And I tell the man, he's everything he's doing right now is blatant racism. and he just against anything that does not favor white people in a good way. I mean, and let's look at it. I mean, there's some things that black people have done. There's some things mostly that white people have done, but it's history. And if we don't learn from, we're gonna repeat it. And that's what entitlement has brought to this. To me, I think he is what entitlement has raised, and that's what we're dealing with right now. That's just my rant. But yeah, please, y'all do something with him in Florida.
And better. I think, we expect for someone else to help us achieve what we want to achieve in this country, as opposed to taking it into our own hands. We need to treat our women better, first and foremost. Our queens. It's like not treating your queen well. Then if someone else mistreats her, now you want to go get a handgun and take care of it. Just craziness, but yeah. And then for the black men out there, you got to be present in the lives of your children and your community. You've got to be present. We can't expect any different when we're not present. To make a point, it doesn't work.
And with that, we want to thank each of you for taking the time to join us. As we wrap up this week's episode, I want to leave you with a short quote by an unknown author, and it reads, "Everyone comes with baggage. Find someone who loves you enough to help you unpack yours." Until next time, peace.